Is that better? Take two. Well, hello and welcome everybody to the meeting of the Town Council Climate and Ecological Emergency Committee today, which is Monday, the 20th of January 2025. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before we start. So there are no fire alarm tests planned for today, and so should the fire alarm sound, it will be for real. In the event of a fire, please follow the instructions that will be given and congregate on the grass verge to the side of the quick fit building. The fire exits are the main stairwell to the reception area and a separate flight of stairs in the kitchen. Reporting at meetings. In the interest of openness and transparency, councillors and members of the public are reminded that the law permits any person to film, record, photograph or use social media in order to report on the proceedings of a meeting of the council or its committees when they are open to the public. The Town Council will record this meeting. Filming and photography will only be permitted from the area designated. No flash photography or additional lighting should be used without prior consent. Anyone wishing to report on the meeting should notify the clerk or the chair so they could be afforded reasonable facilities. People under the age of 18 or other members of the public not wishing to be filmed or photographed should notify the clerk or the chair and should sit in the area designated for this purpose. Improper conduct or any disruptive behaviour could result in expulsion from the meeting. Can you ensure that your mobile phones are changed to silent or switched off and adhere to the non-smoking policy for this building and the grounds of Hamilton House? Thank you. So welcome once again. Just for the people on the recording, just to tell you who is in attendance today. Myself, Paul Page. These are committee members of the Climate and Ecological Committee. Myself, Paul Page, Wendy Brooks and Debbie Ray and Janet Craig and Kathy Williams. Hello, Kathy. John Sillett, Neil Colby and Andy Pearce. And from the officer side, we have Taylor Williams, who's our committee clerk today. Are you on your own today, Taylor? Just me. Oh. So after that, we'll go straight to 111, which is to receive and consider approval of apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we received apologies from Councillor Graham Parker and from the non-councillor members Rachel Bunn and Ben Paul, all with reasons provided.
Thank you very much. I thank you, Wendy. You propose we accept those?
Yeah.
Debbie, second that. And can we have a vote, please? That's unanimous. That's everybody. Thank you, Taylor. 112, declarations of interest and dispensations. 1121, to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary and other registrable and non-registrable interest from members on items on the agenda. Andy?
Yeah, I don't quite know what the specifics of the conversation will be, but I'm current chair of Gunton Residents Association, which is involved, it's not leading on, but it's involved in efforts to get a 20-mile-an-hour zone outside the school on Gainsborough Drive. And I'm involved separately with another primary school in Lowestoft, which is similarly concerned with speeding and congestion outside one of the entrances and is seeking help on that, either of which could come up in discussion on 119.3.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking to myself, perhaps I ought to say that I'm also a member of that same committee on that school. So that ought to be noted. Taylor, thank you. Sorry, Janet, I was just thinking what I wanted to say myself.
I'm sorry, that's all right. I was
Janet.
I haven't got a copy of the agenda in front of me because I pushed directly here from somewhere else. I am a member of East Suffolk Council, and that normally comes from several points during the meeting.
Wendy?
Just to say I'm a member of Suffolk Wildlife Trust, which might come up, might not.
Debbie?
I'm also a member of Suffolk Wildlife Trust.
And I'm also a member of Suffolk Wildlife Trust. Thank you, Taylor.
I think.
And as is Kathy.
Yeah.
It should be compulsory, or every member of this committee is a member of that, I think. I think that's everybody, Taylor. Thank you. 112.2 to consider written requests for dispensations for disclosable pecuniary interests and note dispensations granted.
None received.
None. Thank you very much. 113 to consider the draft minutes of the meeting on the 16th of December. Wendy.
Suppose we approve.
Thank you. Andy.
I'll second with one amendment if Wendy's happy to take it on board. It's not anything fundamental to the accuracy of the content. It's just a spelling of a surname. At 103.1, it mentions the name of the ABP port operations manager, which I mentioned, and it's spelt how it sounds, D-E-W-I-T-T. It's actually spelt D-U-I-T.
Already amended it.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy. Anybody else? No, that's it then. Thank you. So we need to vote for that, don't we?
Yeah.
So could we all vote for that? We've had a first and second. That is unanimous. Everybody, thank you. Accept those draft minutes. 114, public forum, an opportunity for the public to make comments on any matters on this agenda and to consider any advanced comments from the public. I think, Debbie, you said that we have a member of public who wants to speak on one of the agenda items. Yeah. So if that's all right with the committee, we could bring that to the first foremost thing, yeah?
Yeah, if the committee's in agreement and
Yeah,
you're square
yeah.
to chair, that could be moved forward.
Are we all happy to take that forward? Do we need to vote on that, Taylor?
Yeah.
I propose we take that one forward then, and Debbie, you second that. Can we all vote on that one, please? That's unanimous. Right, we'll bring that one forward then. 118, to consider issues related to waste and pollution. Is that the right one? No, sorry.
Climate implication of building, is it that one?
Yeah.
118.
Oh, it is, yes, sorry, Paul, it is. To consider issues relating to waste. and
Yeah,
pollution.
that's what I said.
Yes.
I thought it was, I've got
That's
my
the
agenda's
climate-
wrong.
No, it's not, it's the climate.
It's 118.1. The climate implications of building demolition in light of the current demolitions taking place in Lowestoft. I use the type, the header on that. It's fine. Okay then. So we have somebody wishing to speak. Thank you. See what happens.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Robin Debray. I've recently moved into Windsor Road in Kirkley. I'm also a Unite community member. I was invited by Richard from Waveney Trades Council to do some investigatory work on St Peter's Court. Now, I'm not competent to make any judgment or assessment of the environmental impact, but what I am qualified to do is to say a little bit about the process by which East Suffolk has come to make this decision to demolish, and I think this will be of interest to you. So I looked at, I wanted to find out how the council came to take this decision, and I discovered that absolutely everything relating to the decision is confidential. And so that would, I imagine, you will know better, include any environmental impact assessment of the demolition. So you will probably all be aware, because I've written to all of you requesting that you approach Caroline Topping as leader of East Suffolk Council to hold back on the demolition until such time as all of this information is in the public domain and available for public scrutiny. She passed me on to David Bevan, who has advised me that the demolition will go ahead. Since then, I've pursued a Freedom of Information request, which I put in prior to Christmas. About a week ago, I received a message from East Suffolk Council saying that they weren't going to reply within the statutory period. They were going to extend it for another 20 days or so. So I'm expecting in early February to receive whatever response they have to make to that Freedom of Information request. I've also requested from my union legal advice as to what it would take to secure an injunction to prevent the demolition from going ahead, and I'm advised that it would require initially a complaint to East Suffolk Council. Then, if that complaint did not provide us with sufficient information, to take that to the local government ombudsman, and if we didn't get anywhere with that, then we might be able to secure an injunction. Now, for me, the only reason to secure an injunction would be if the council's deliberation doesn't stack up. And from the information that I have been able to glean, it would appear that the cost of demolition and replacement is likely to be more than the cost of refurbishment. I have secured figures that do suggest that. And funnily enough, it was David Bevan who provided those with me. He said that the demolition would cost 5 million and the replacement would cost 200,000 a unit, which with 90 units would be 18 million. So we're talking about 23 million in all, which is the amount that they say it will cost to refurbish the building. But I've investigated further, and I understand that the second lift that they say is required is not actually required. It's only required for new builds. And my understanding from the fire officer here in Lowestoft is that the fire and safety people are perfectly satisfied with the security of St. Peter's Court in the incident of a fire. So all of this suggests to me, including with whatever you come up with, that there really are some serious questions to be answered, and it would be utterly inappropriate to continue with the demolition without them being subject to public scrutiny. So my request to you would be, if you feel it's appropriate, to take this issue to your full council meeting at the earliest opportunity and put in a formal request for the holding back of the demolition until all of us have had an opportunity to scrutinise the deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you. We have met before, I think, Robin. Wendy, you were first.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Before we go any further, Janet, I
Janet's
think
got to leave.
I think you ought to leave. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Wendy. Thank you, Janet.
I think you said, Robin, that you'd circulated this committee with information. I haven't received any. No, we didn't. That's fine.
No, we did say that, but we haven't received.
We haven't received
Can
anything.
I confirm that I circulated every member of Lowestoft Town Council?
I haven't had anything.
I don't have
Anyway,
access to your
yeah,
email box.
but
Never mind about that. Maybe we check the email address, and maybe we just need to have that recirculated so we can all see it. A number of us are, three of us sitting in here are actually on the planning committee of Lowestoft Town Council. Now, we don't have final say. We can only make recommendations, and generally the committee is very, very unhappy about the whole way this has been, the demolition. We're not pleased at all. But what you're saying about them refusing to give the information and the numbers is deeply worrying, because I mean, I'm sure many of us are not huge fans of high-rise flats, but in a time of housing crisis, to discover that when they decided that they were going to demolish it, that a third of the flats are empty was utterly disgraceful, and nobody's ever answered why those flats were empty. I think we do need to challenge and ask far more questions. This is our town. It seems to me that East Suffolk Council, although they call themselves green and independent and all the rest of it, have been happily knocking things down in Lowestoft now for quite a few months. And well, I mean, I'm not in any political party. I'm an independent. But thank you very much for coming. I'm going to get very angry, but I'm going to stop now.
Thank you, Wendy.
Stop.
I agree with everything you said. Andy, you were next.
Yeah. Well, Wendy's alluded to the fact that we've considered this on the Town Council Planning Committee, and she's also mentioned that the Town Council Planning Committee is not a primary planning authority, it's a statutory consultee for planning applications in Lowestoft. And there is some public information available for this, because it was at one of the meetings shortly before Christmas that we considered a demolition notice for St. Peter's Court, which is on the portal. I couldn't tell you the reference, but our office will be able to give you the planning reference so that you can go on the portal and see the supporting documentation that was supplied with that portal. But we did have a number of concerns in relation to the supporting documentation, including some of the environmental information that was supplied on that. And outside of concerns, we had a number of questions on which I believe we were going to seek clarification. But did we actually ask for a holding objection until we received that information? That's what I can't remember. Do you know, Tony?
So the planning committee considered the demolition notification. They recommended refusal until evidence was supplied to show all reasonable alternatives have been demonstrated to repair and repurpose the existing building. They note the financial and environmental costs for the demolition and note that East Suffolk Council declared a climate emergency and thus have obligations to mitigating total CO2 expenditure in the process of demolition. And should the local plan authority permit it to proceed, then it requests there be further liaison with East Suffolk Council Ecology and measures must be adopted to prevent avoidable wildlife disturbance.
So what was the date of that meeting, Taylor? Okay, and are you aware that whether the demolition has since been approved by East Suffolk? Because I would be then concerned if David Bevan, who is the cabinet member at East Suffolk Council, formerly Lib Dem, now independent, but he has the portfolio for housing. If he has confirmed that the demolition is going ahead before the planning application, the demolition notice has formally been approved by the planning authority, that's rather worrying. Because even if approval is notional, it should still be subject to due process before the demolition is concerned. I would also be concerned if an FOI has gone in and has been extended for reply, because the potential is you might find you'll get your reply after the demolition has taken place, which would hardly be in the spirit of openness and accountability under the Nolan principles. So we haven't had a reply to our queries, have we, Taylor? So is the demolition notice on the portal still open?
Decision issued.
So they've issued a decision. And does it say on there whether that was made under delegated authority by officers, or was that made by committee?
Hang on, I've got the EDA, I've got the paper here. It's they haven't.
Wendy, can we wait from the clerk, please?
Just hang on a second, Wendy.
So on the portal, prior approval granted. East Suffolk Council's local plan authority hereby give notice that prior approval is required and hereby granted for the proposed method of demolition.
Can't hear, so you have to speak up, Taylor, I'm afraid.
It was under delegation or not. Talk much just sounds like.
Yeah. So was that we now know that the primary planning authority made a decision on the 10th of January, or confirmed its decision on the 10th of January.
Yeah.
I would be worried if it was taken under delegation, given the public interest in this application. But regardless, I think, because we've been informed that information that was requested by a member of the public under FOI has been extended and not yet provided, and we haven't received a direct reply to our queries. They've made a decision, but without replying to our queries. Could I suggest that actually we do, as the gentleman requests, and we do table an item for January full council to express our concern that a decision was made without our queries and concerns being addressed. And in relation to this gentleman's information and the fact that an FOI request has been extended, whilst the cabinet member has told him separately the demolition's going ahead before his representations have been addressed, could we ask full council essentially to make representations expressing its concerns at the lack of openness and accountability in the way that this has been handled and communicated?
Thank you, Andy. We've got a proposal on the table then. Debbie?
Yeah, I asked for this agenda item to be put on, not only because of the potential or the proposed demolition of St Peter's Court, but also other demolition that's going on around town. And from a climate perspective, the demolition of buildings, or basically when buildings are built, the fabric of the building contains steel, concrete, bricks, and the creation of that contains a lot of carbon. So carbon is created when these things are made. And so each building has this carbon embedded in it. And when the building's knocked down, you know, that and rebuilt, then it has to happen again. So it's like a waste, carbon is being wasted, if you like. And there's been a lot of news recently about stopping demolition. So repurposing buildings rather than knocking them down because of the carbon aspects. And Lord Deben, who used to be on the government's climate change committee, said there needs to be a planning law to stop giving permission for demolitions. And he said, we're not going to win the battle against climate change unless we fight it on every front. And concrete itself contributes 8% of the world's carbon emissions. So concrete has, you know, knocking buildings down is not sustainable and it's not efficient from a climate perspective. So basically buildings should be reused and repurposed, not knocked down, if we want to comply with our climate obligations.
Thanks, Debbie. Wendy, come back.
Yes, I mean, I'm just reading something in the Lowestoft Journal, and there's a sentence in there that apparently a survey has been done that says repairs will cost 24 million. Now, we need to see this survey. That seems like a huge amount of money, doesn't it, for a repair of a building? But you know, where that survey came from, of course. Prior notification is the only thing they've got so far. Prior notification of demolition. Fully support what Deborah said. I'm glad that Andy is absolutely right that we've already raised this issue and it should go to full council.
Yeah.
Has somebody proposed and somebody
Yeah,
seconded?
Andy's already proposed it. Yeah.
I'll second. Oh, Deborah can second.
Everyone wants to second it.
Yeah.
Any other comments about what we've discussed so far? Andy?
I'd just like to say in relation to the figures, I couldn't remember the date, but I do remember in the original publicity that the suggested justification was because this is, I think, a late 1960s construction, that and I don't know what the rate of interior degradation has been, and maybe it's building standards, energy, you know, the EPCs and so on like that. But I had read that the cost of actually making it habitable again and so on like that would be more than the cost of demolition and rebuild. But equally, so I had not and still don't have a position on that until I see the numbers. But the gentleman's also furnished us with some comparative numbers, and I had not seen the comparative numbers of refurb before, only the numbers of, only the numbers of one side of it. And I don't know whether they are subject to challenge. So I don't have a position on the figures, but I do believe in the interest of transparency, they should be provided so there can be a debate. And I am wary about the fact that an FOI has not only been answered but has been extended, because if it was all above board and transparent, why not just respond to the FOI in the statutory timescale? And it worries me that a decision has been made by the primary planning authority whilst an FOI is still on the table and an actual fact has been extended, because that isn't, to me, open.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yes, you're right. We have been knocking a lot of stuff down in Lowestoft, haven't we, Wendy?
Yeah.
And of course, Hamilton House has been in the flight path of all the dust and rubble and mess that's coming from the other side of the road for the last few months. Has that been a problem for the office here? Oh, okay. I'm just thinking what would be the same in St Peter's Court. Yeah. Richard, you want to say something? Go on, Richard.
It sounds to me like they use it can be similar to what they're going to say with the FOI request as well. That it's not like. But the other thing is the logistics of it all. It's very. I mean, it's 16 floors. It's about ground floor is 24 floors. The logistics of living people living by the factory is right next door to it.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, logistics of it seems to me that it's the demolition of that is going to be we're going to affect the living environment and the road system as well. They're going to have so many trucks going in and out every day, removing rubble.
Yeah.
If it's anything like some of the demolitions that are taking place in somewhere else, the one in Norwich outside the road, but it's from the outside and there's rubble everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be trying to be contained and they're going to use it. They're going to take one floor at a time, which will be very time consuming, I would suggest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I would think that the whole thing is that the idea would be to, and the question that we won't worry about whether in fact it does cost 24 million. It's already had quite a lot of investment post Grenfell.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it should all be flat in terms of cavities in the wall.
Yeah.
And maybe if we need to have declare. I mean, we have an architectural building or where the voids are and that kind of on each floor, so that we can see where in fact they're suggesting that it would cost all that money.
Yeah. You're right, Rich, and there's many considerations about this, but we've got the proposal, we've got a second act, we need to vote. Did you want to come back on it, Wendy? We're going to do.
Yes, I do briefly. What occurs to me is one of the phrases that has been thrown around about St Peter's Court is that kind of concrete. What's it got? You know, the one the hospitals have got.
The
rack.
That one.
Yeah.
That we need to check out definitely, because if this building is salvable, we get application after application for students, student accommodation, urgently needed. Now, if that building can be fitted out again, it would make perfect student accommodation, wouldn't it?
Andy?
Well, halfway up. I mean, I used to live on the top.
Oh, really? Okay.
They did try and get community together, but it didn't really come to anything. But that's that kind of ethos would have to be created. It's an empty building now. They've got basically they could redo it and then start once again.
Yeah, I think you're right, Rich. Andy?
Yeah, and I think the demolition methodology, because it was set out in the notice, in the statement of demolition, that was discussed at quite length in planning when we considered the demolition notice, including the effect on the neighbouring community, given the tight geographic constraints of the area in which it is. So I think that has been noticed and commented on that, and that was in our feedback. I mean, personally speaking, I don't have a position on the demolition itself until the questions have been answered. But equally, I don't think a decision should be made and implemented until those questions are answered, because I don't know what's subject to challenge or not. What I feel uncomfortable with is rushing it through at pace without making that information available publicly, given the public interest in it, because that to me is not consistent with principles of openness and accountability. And I think that whatever decision I would make on whether I feel the demolition is justifiable would then come out of whatever answers are provided. And I don't think that's happened. And this is just another worry. But I agree with the points that Wendy's made. I mean, given what we're being told about, HMOs in certain areas and stuff like that, well, if a building could alleviate the proliferation of HMOs in a deprived ward for student accommodation, why not? You know what I mean? Because it could be perfectly decent housing. And it would be interesting to know when the cabinet member with a portfolio for housing made the statement to Mr. Debray that the demolition was going ahead, whether that was before or after the 10th of January when the demolition notice was confirmed. Because if it was before, quite frankly, that would imply predetermination.
We need some
And
checks
of
and
course,
balances.
that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
So I think
Thank you.
there are questions that need answering. I mean, unlike some people, I don't have a definite position on this application, but I'm equally not supportive at this stage because I think there are too many questions that need answering.
That's fine.
But I just want to be clear that the proposal as it stands is specific to St Peter's Court. There is no general statement about demolition, and if someone wanted to make one, that would need to be a separate proposal.
Absolutely. St Peter's Court. Last one, Wendy, and we'll move on.
Well, I actually want to take it back a bit, and I want us to focus on the fact of the climate emergency aspect of it, because I mean, I've raised the housing issue, which I think is extremely important, but equally important is the destruction to the environment that demolition causes. So you can sit on the fence, but actually demolition damages our environment. We know that, it's absolutely proven. You know, the demolition is just not good for our climate.
Can I just come back there, Chair, please? Because I'm not sitting on the fence, okay? When I said I haven't made my mind up, it doesn't mean I don't share the general concerns that demolition is environmentally undesirable.
That's right.
What I want to hear are the facts of their case to justify demolition, and I don't think they've been presented. That is the only reason I say I don't have a position on whether I support or oppose it. I am not on the fence as regards the desirability of demolition generally.
That's fine. Thank you.
To finish,
Thank you for that. Because I think when we argue against demolition, what we want the authority to be doing is exploring all options to avoid demolition, not to look at demolition as being the option. You know, like we can demolish that, because I think what they've done, and it is extraordinary the amount of demolition that's gone on recently in Lowestoft, that they are not taking that into account. And for councillors that consider themselves to be green and, you know, environmentally friendly and all the rest of it, it's extraordinary that that conversation is not there.
There's been a wrecking ball taken to our town.
Yes.
Pardon the pun. Debbie.
Yeah, and
I agree.
East Suffolk Council have declared a climate emergency, so they should be taking the climate into account in everything they do.
Yeah. Well, Robin, I think we are going to take this to full council on. So there's going to be a better vote on it, though. So we've got a proposer, we've got a second, so we can vote to take this to full council, please. That's unanimous. Thank you, Taylor. So that will go ahead. Thank you. Thank you.
Do we need a separate proposal?
Sorry, Wendy.
Do we need a separate proposal about the importance of?
Hang on, Richard. We just got Wendy speaking.
About the importance of not looking on demolition as being a first option, but an absolute last option when every other. Do we need a separate proposal on that? Or is it
Andy?
included?
So can I just say, in relation to the question, before we move on from St Peter's Court, I agree with Wendy.
Yeah.
Full council is Tuesday, the 28th of this month at 6:30 p.m. And if you arrange with the office, I'm sure you'd be allowed to come and speak if you wish to speak to the whole council.
Oh, that would be great if you could, Robin. You're only allowed 3 minutes. I'm a bit lenient. No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, of course. So the supplementary, Wendy, was about the
That we urge East Suffolk Council to recognise that demolition is the last
last resort.
option,
Last resort.
and that all other opportunities for renovation and repurposing buildings must be taken first.
Okay, thank you.
Something like that.
Andy?
Yeah. Could I suggest, if Wendy's willing, that rather than just urging them, which they will no doubt flatly ignore, and also linking it specifically to planning, which makes it even more likely that they'll flatly ignore it, is could we ask the administration rather than the planning committee, so send it to the leader and cabinet, because there will be different people with different portfolios in that cabinet that point to this issue. Can they explain the scale of demolition, both demolition that's taken place and demolition proposed in Lowestoft, in relation to their declaration of a climate emergency, and can they tell us how they justify it?
Fantastic.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's excellent. We've got a proposal, got a second. Taylor, can we send that off to them in that format? And we'll vote then. And that's everybody apart from Neil.
If that item's finished, something to let Councillor Craig.
Yeah, I will. And please, I'm also going to take, for the next, we finished with that agenda, haven't we? So we move on to 115, finance and budget. Would you mind if I just vanish for a second?
Well, have you got to go out?
Just for a minute. I'll take over for a second.
Yeah.
Item 115, finance and budget, 115.1, to monitor expenditure by this committee from the climate emergency budget under delegated authority. Andy.
Just to speak to this, that all budgets, including the climate emergency budget, have been under active consideration recently as part of the annual budgeting and preparation and recommendations for 25-26. The recommendations for climate are essentially that the 24-25 budgets will be maintained in real terms, so like including an uplift for inflation. That includes the general budget for climate, which is not linked to any specific issue, so it's there for any climate issue, but also specific budgets such as the budget for the bulky waste collection and things like that. So that they are built into that recommendation that they are being maintained in real terms. But additionally, we had pledged in relation to the town hall, to climate and environmental features, that we would directly fund PV panels and potentially other environmental panels up to a certain figure over 2 years to take the pressure off the climate budget. And the first tranche of that is in there for the PV panels, which is currently budgeted at 45,000. I think the indicative cost was a shade over 40. So there's a buffer in there. So there's a specific one-off ring-fenced amount in there over and above the annual figures. So those figures are in the recommendations that are going forward to full council for consideration next week.
Great, thanks. Any comments on that? Okay, item 116, to consider the following matters to raise with the appropriate East Suffolk Council Cabinet member. 116.1, obtain information from the local planning authority on what government housing targets, which override local planning authorities, mean in practical terms of planning and climate perspectives. Wendy.
I'm trying to get my head around what this actually means. I've noticed that they're very bad at coming back to us on figures we ask, like how many families in Lowestoft are currently living in temporary accommodation. We get no answers to things like that. It would seem from reading, as somebody who still ploughs through the Lowestoft Journal, the number of decisions on HMOs that the planning officer are making under delegated authority seem to be increasing. The number, there's another one this week that we recommend a refusal of. The officers have approved it. Now, we're told, well, you have to use your district councillors better to call it in. Well, I mean, how? If our district councillors are not listening, then how do we get them to raise it with the planning committee? Sorry, Janet, yes. No, but that's the problem, isn't it? There's a problem. That a number of these are in Harbour and Normanston and Kirkley. We have 6 councillors there, Labour councillors, and yet we can't. I think only one of them ever raises anything so it can go to the planning committee. I don't know how we begin to use this better. I don't know really what we can't get answers to the simplest things. Like if I knew that there were 10,000 young people living in temporary accommodation or in hotels, I might be more sympathetic. But because we don't have the figures and we don't have the figures for children living in temporary accommodation, they can interpret it in any way they want, it seems to me.
Andy?
So Taylor circulated a response from an East Suffolk senior planner, but because the time it came in, it was only circulated about an hour before this meeting. So not everyone would have read it, but it was quite interesting in what it said, not just in response to this specific question, but more widely. So it basically says the government published a new national planning policy framework in December 24, and alongside this, a new standard method for calculating housing need. For East Suffolk, the housing need figure calculated in January 25, i.e. this month, is 1,644 dwellings compared to 905 under the former standard method and 916 total annual requirements in both local plans, which I assume means the former Waveney and Suffolk coastal plans. East Suffolk Council does not have further information to provide in relation to the government's housing targets and their practical impacts. We plan to publish a position paper in March, which may be of interest to you. East Suffolk Council intends to produce a new East Suffolk local plan to replace the two existing local plans, which are the Suffolk Coastal Local Plan from 2020 and the Waveney Local Plan from 2019, excluding the Broads Authority area because the Broads Authority prepare their own local plans. The timetable for the new East Suffolk local plan is contained in the local development scheme, which we will update and publish soon. The new East Suffolk local plan will provide the means to allocated land, I assume that's to allocate land for residential development to meet the government's housing targets. The local plan will address issues such as where to allocate land for development, how much land to allocate for development, how to mitigate the impacts of climate change, and a wide range of other issues. We hope Lowestoft Town Council will engage positively with East Suffolk Council in the coming years as we develop the new local plan. So that's a statement, right? I mean, apart from telling us what the government targets are for East Suffolk, it doesn't tell us a great deal. But there is a short, there is a relatively short timescale for the publication of a new local plan, which we had been pushing for since last year. And all we had been told was it would be reviewed again in this year. So we didn't even have a definite commitment to a new local plan, which we now do. So that in itself, albeit for different reasons, mainly climate resilience, is a comfort. But I would suggest at this stage that we note this response and the information contained in this response and the commitment to publish a new local plan this year and a timetable for that local plan. And we look forward to engaging with East Suffolk Council without actually being able to say in advance whether that will be positive or not, because it will very much depend on the content of the plan.
Okay.
And I'll make that as a formal proposal.
Okay. Well, I'll second that then.
Sorry, I was trying to get-
Oh, sorry, Neil, carry on.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm quite concerned by the fact that they had told most of the parish councils that there wasn't going to be a new local plan because there wasn't anything that needed to be changed only just over a year ago. Obviously, nationally, things have changed. But we also have a situation where there have been planned developments on the like south side of Lake Lothing now for the length of this council. There are even house designs going up, and that there's been no movement on that because it isn't possibly profitable to do so at this time, even though it's a sill-free area. Then actually it does need that would be a housing benefit for this town if that was to proceed, especially if it was social housing.
Thank you.
Yeah, Wendy?
Oh, sorry. Oh, you changed.
No,
We're both cheering.
when we finish this one,
Yeah.
we go back to
Confusing.
Neil.
It's very confusing. Right, now, how on earth does the government calculate housing need? Is it somebody sitting in an office and looks at the map and goes, okay, 900 there, 3,000 there, 2,000 there? Does it have any basis in reality? My suspicion, and many people's, is that it doesn't. It's actually made up in an office. With the house builders, they sit down, the house builders, the government sit down together and then they make up this figure. It does not relate to real life. My concern is that the length of time a local plan takes to come into existence, why the rush suddenly when, as Neil quite rightly says, before they said it didn't need anything doing to it. It seems to me that they are just, I think like many people, I actually want to know what the real need is. I know there's a need, but I want to know what the real need is. How many children are we talking about we've got in Lowest? I want to know that, not to say we don't need to do it, but to actually know it and know. And without that information, we're just being blinded with figures and told, well, it was 1,600 now, 1,000. You think, well, where did this number come from? And I think that's a legitimate question to ask. Where do these housing target numbers come from? That's, the basic thing. That's what I want to know. But their response is meaningless. It says virtually nothing. It says, right, we do, the government says this and we're saying it's just nonsense. Nothing there.
Andy.
For a crisis.
Well, it's not meaningless, but equally it's not something on which we can make an advanced commitment sight unseen to engage positively when we don't know what's going to be in there. We can only commit to engage with it. Positive or not will depend on the contents and the rationale. So that's what I say. I think we just need to acknowledge and note it and confirm that we will engage with the process and that we welcome the commitment to publish a new local plan because we have already been pushing for that for a year, albeit for other reasons. But that we will engage the process and look forward to hearing from you in due course because they've committed to publish a timescale and so on for it. So that was my proposal, which I'll restate. With the addition, as I said, of welcoming the commitment to publish a new local plan. In relation to Wendy's specific point about the rationale for the figure, so we know in practical terms that under the former standard method, it had been identified that 905 new dwellings were required across the whole district, not just in Lowestoft. And that's now increased by 700, which is, getting on for double, to 1,644. And then 916 annual new dwellings thereafter. But it does say the government published a new national planning policy framework in December 24, and alongside this, a new standard method for calculating housing need. So in addition to my proposal, which is for this committee, I would suggest that we ask for an item to go on planning to look at the new national planning policy framework and the new standard method for calculating housing need that apparently was published alongside it to try and understand the implications for Lowestoft.
The Garden Village, which Suffolk County Council, it's their dream. The Garden Village is promising 1,300 homes. Now, given our target is 1,600, we're nearly there. The 1,003, the homes that it's promised, it's in the Garden Village plan. The Kirkley plan, it has the problem of contaminated land, that you can't build up industry with housing because of the water, the sound bouncing over the water. It's ill thought out. It's another ill thought out plan. So the plans. I just wanted, I thought that was quite funny actually, that we've got 1,600 we've got to achieve, and according to Suffolk County Council, we have 1,300 down the road.
And that's 1,600 across the whole of East Suffolk District. Yeah, not just locally. But bear in mind that in the Waveney Local Plan of 2019, it's not just the Garden Village, it's not just the Geldwin development, but there's also the two developments at Union Lane, north and south. Yeah. So, they're both in there. I mean, the one at Geldwin, when they came in to present to us on the the scoping document for initial thing, in advance of any planning document, apart from all the things like flooding risk, contamination risk, all the rest of it, it actually stated in that document, because I raised it because it's a risk in itself around viability, about a budget gap. Now that was before the flood barrier was postponed or indefinitely cancelled, whichever terminology you want to go with. But that was intrinsic to the Waveney local plan, that there would be complete flood defences. Now, if there was already a budget gap in that development when the expectation was that the tidal barrier would be completed, and now they're going to have to do extra work to raise those buildings on a certain elevation to take them down one flood zone, one flood zone to minimise the risk. What is that going to do to cost, and by extension, what is that going to do to the viability of the project? So there are things to consider on each of the individual large-scale developments that are mentioned in the Waveney local plan. But I think in terms of the general change in the national planning policy framework, this new standard method for calculating housing need that was apparently published alongside that in December 24, and this commitment to publish a new local plan this year with a time frame for publication of that document along the way, I think we should acknowledge that and say that we welcome the new local plan and that we will engage. But we should not make a commitment, engage positively as in constructively, yes, but that doesn't mean we are going to commit in advance to support the new local plan, because that will depend what's in it, both in terms of housing and what was particularly important to us last year, even before the new government was elected, climate resilience. We were thinking particularly of flooding, but there are other aspects to that. So we will engage across all levels. And if they consider the fact that we will engage constructively to be positive, then we will engage positively. But we can't give a blank check response to support the local plan until we know what's in it.
Okay, Neil. Oh, okay. All right. I thought I'd finish this section and then Paul carry on. But
It's LGA 1972 for the chair, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Oh, sorry, but that's my fault, because I said do that agenda item. Sorry, my fault.
right. So Neil wanted to speak.
Yes, well, back on then. Neil.
And I think actually what you haven't mentioned is there are two quite large developments going on at Carlton Colville as well. And I mean, Carlton Colville in the last 10 to 20 years has grown so massively. It's actually I think it's got is bigger than Bungay and so on in that one particular area. So it is significant. But what I think will be argued is that they are all delivering over a time period, not immediately. And that's why they'll argue that the numbers are different. But I'm happy to second Andy's proposal if we can actually put one thing into it, that they actually take real effort to actually consult with the parish councils and involve them, because last time round we were invited along to a meeting, and I think actually there was two things that actually happened around the same time, because there was also the boundary changes that were sprung on the parish councils around the time that most of them actually go on to summer break and don't meet. Now, we don't do that here, but for the majority of it, it actually meant that nothing could really be discussed.
Maybe
I'd be more than happy to add that to the proposal, because we've expressed our own concern about lack of meaningful input and consultation, and at the times that we are repeatedly told that we will be kept informed, which means after the decisions are made, even on matters where we have expressly asked to input. Where we receive a response at all, which is not each time, sometimes we're just ignored, we have been told, I am sure you will be kept informed, or words to that effect, which is not what we're asking for, and that is not consultation. So I'm happy to add Neil's comment formally to my proposal.
We've got proposer, second. Can we have a vote on that then, please? That's unanimous. That's everybody. Thank you, Taylor.
But separately from that, Chair Taylor, my other comment was about if I need to make it a proposal or whether it can just be done as an action. Could we have an item go forward to Town Council Planning to understand the changes in the National Planning Policy Framework, and because it says alongside publication of the National Planning Policy Framework in December 24, it was also published a new standard method for calculating housing need. Could we have an item on planning to consider that, so that we can understand what it is, which directly points to Wendy's question about how do they come up with these figures?
Yeah, again, I'll happily
Second that.
Are you happy to just add into there to refer anything back to this committee that refers to climate and environment? Because they obviously those figures could have a very big impact on that.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that, but I don't think the proposal Taylor's just indicated
Yeah.
it can be done administratively.
Oh, okay, so we don't need to vote on it. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you, Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's that one. So we're 117. To consider issues relating to the energy and water supply of the built environment of Lowestoft and its relevant actions. So we need to get Janet back.
Oh, yes. She can come back for this one, yes.
Janet, are you all right?
Yeah, you're all right.
You're in this one. So 117.1, discuss the decision by the National Grid to build pylons as opposed to laying underground cables through the Waveney Valley, and whether to support Suffolk County Council's opposition to the proposal. Wendy.
Yes, I asked for this to go on the agenda. The Waveney Valley it came into the news not long ago. I assume everybody is familiar with the arguments.
Yeah.
And one area that they said they would avoid, I mean, I'm not being parochial about this, was that they would avoid putting pylons along the Waveney Valley because of its nature sensitivity, because of is the beauty of it. National Grid has just gone back on that and said, no, we're going to put pylons everywhere. They're very, very large. They take up important farming space. Much of Suffolk's arable land is really, really important, and we desperately need to be growing more food in this country. The fact there is a solution that we're not saying we don't want this energy going to London, this green energy going to London. What people are saying is we don't want it ruining our countryside and taking away our farming land, which is very, very much needed if we're going to start improving the amount of food that we grow in this country for consumption. I was very disappointed to hear our MP saying she thought the pylons were fine and that going underground would destroy the landscape. I mean, it's just nonsense, absolute nonsense what she was saying. There is an alternative, which is to cable underground. That is the one that should be taken. It is the situation of Suffolk County Council that I find myself in a very rare place of being in agreement with them. Very rare. But yes, you can. I don't often, in fact, rare, if ever, agree with Suffolk County Council on this one. I know it's not Lowestoft, but it is Suffolk. It is our county, and my proposal, if everybody agrees, is that we support Suffolk County Council's position on this.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. We'll look for some other views. Let's go for somebody different. John.
Hi. Well, I'll start with a question and then carry on. I thought that we had some success or heard something good news in that cables were going to be laid from the wind farms down to Tilbury or somewhere, and I thought that was good.
They backtracked on, John. That was the agreement, and that was. Sorry, can I just
answer? Yeah, of course you can.
That was what came out in the news that National Grid has said, no, we're not doing that anymore. Yes, we did say we'd do it, but now we're not.
Oh, okay, thanks for that clarification. No, I support your motion, Wendy. I support everything you say on that because, to industrialize such lovely areas is diabolical. It has an effect. Scenery has an effect on mental health, and it's something we bequeath, isn't it, to future generations. And for the cost of putting things, underground, I know it's be more expense, but we're talking about the future and to do it once, and so. Yeah, we should support Suffolk County Council's opposition to that proposal.
Thank you, John. Andy.
Yeah. I broadly agree, but I'm not familiar with the detail as Wendy is. So what I wanted to ask is, because I don't know the relative logistical implications and costs of the two alternatives, I haven't looked for them.
No.
I'll be quite honest. I don't know what the arguments are for them backtracking, but so that's my first point. The other one was Suffolk County Council's opposition. Is the opposition environmentally based? It is because of the environment, not for any other reason. Because I mean, my first instinct was, we've all got our thoughts, and I don't want to stray and be political about the cancellation of the elections and the democratic deficit, but obviously that would potentially prevent accountability at the ballot box if people didn't like this decision, which was thought to be a pertinent factor in the May 2023 elections on East Suffolk. But at the same time, if Suffolk County Council are opposing it, then the dynamic is different because they're not behind the decision. So perhaps it is just coincidental. Have they published information, Wendy, or anyone in the know, on the reason for backtracking and whether they are logistical, whether they are financial, why they favour pylons over cables, or has that just been left unsaid?
Can you answer that, Wendy? Yes.
The cost, that's the argument is that going underground would just be too expensive. There has been some tentative, I can't remember it, there has been some tentative suggestions about the difference in cost. I think it's actually not that much. I think the people who are very much involved in the campaign feel it's just sheer bloody mindedness, excuse my language, that they're just being stubborn and just saying, we've decided this. And the actual cost isn't that enormous. And what was the other thing you said, Andy, about that's their reasoning, the cost?
What was it cost, or was it logistical, as in what they would actually have to do to build the cables in terms of the difficulty of the terrain, whether like water courses were involved, that kind of thing?
No. The other thing is that they're saying that, well, our MP is saying that going underground will devastate the countryside, and we can kind of put nice plants back, and we can actually enhance nature diversity, which is whereas a pylon, of course, 50-foot pylon isn't going to have any, it's just nonsense. There will, of course, if you tunnel, like we had at Links Road, the Anglian waterworks, obviously you're going to disrupt nature while you're doing it, but that's no reason you can you can put that back.
Well,
you can actually.
I think the pylon, even apart from the physical height of it, anything which has an electricity field is going to affect nature to some degree.
Yeah.
Particularly anything that relies on, echolocation, particularly, anything that is sensory, our electricity receptors is going to have an impact. So has there been any kind of environmental impact assessment to this proposal, or have they just said, in the true spirit of concreting over everything in sight, or pyloning over everything in sight, that they're going to do it? Have they actually committed to doing an environmental impact assessment, or is that another unknown question?
I think so. We'll get Debbie. Do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But as far from my reading, there's two alternatives. There's either going underground, and one of the campaign groups have suggested they use high voltage direct current, which is a new technology, and apparently it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot easier than using AC current, which is what they intend to use. Or that was what they were thinking of using for going underground. So you could go underground using HVDC, high voltage direct current, or you could go offshore. And some people are saying, well, offshore would be a better option.
Definitely.
Yeah, Fiona got that's
Yeah, I
what she
remember
did.
that,
Actually,
Richard.
came and
Yeah.
spoke to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing against power lines is one of the main sources of human-induced bird mortality is power lines.
Yeah.
Power cables. So, it makes sense to go underground.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Kathy, did you have your hand up? And I'll come to Neil.
I did. I was just going to say I'd heard an interview by someone from the National Grid who was making the argument for, obviously, and they were saying that they felt that digging a big hole was more disruptive to the nature, but it didn't really make sense to me, really.
Only temporary.
And but they were implying that you needed to dig a sort of larger hole than us
Yeah.
people might assume
You see,
do.
we haven't got the scientific knowledge, have we? But to me, the ecology could be damaged far more by digging great big holes in the ground than
What, to put the pylons up or
than erecting a pylon. I don't know. I haven't got the scientific knowledge, but it could be devastating. I'll come to Neil next, and then Richard, I'll give you a chance to say something. Okay, Neil.
I know that my experience to do with this hasn't been on this committee, but I had a lot of work with a lot of the councils further south of here, who were obviously going to be in the zones where there was going to be the landfall was becoming in, and there were massive proposals for huge, great buildings going in to manage it that were actually going to devastate the tourist industry in that area as well, and the heritage coast. And therefore, one of the things that was picked up, and it may even be the same lady who you're talking about, was actually doing it off lot shore, because their cables are all basically having to come in from shore. They're coming from the wind farms,
Yeah.
and therefore the most logical place to do it is to take them under the sea right the way down to where they need to be, rather than actually ruining countryside and all the long-term effects are going to be. And it will actually not just be there, because they're talking about a lot of it coming in at Bacton as well. So you're looking at a huge run of pylons.
Richard, what were you going to say? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Okay. Wendy, do you want to come back?
do very quickly on your point about I don't really know enough and talk about yourself. We're not really
That was my personal opinion, yeah.
right. Well, some of us read a bit widely. The people who are actually opposed to the pylons are coming at it very much from an environmental perspective. They're not coming, so they're not people who would welcome digging up the countryside. They wouldn't. It's not about aesthetics. It's not about pylons don't look nice. It's actually about damage to the environment, loss of agricultural land. So it is, and actually the point that somebody mentioned, which is so true, is that nature and mental health are so important.
John said that.
John used
Yeah, John
the term
said that.
industrialized. And we have one of the most nature depleted countries. We are one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. And we should, wherever possible, or the government should be doing things to not to diminish it, not to put us even lower. Are we going to be lost? Are we going to be bottom? Is that the aim?
Well, we're a small country with lots of people. That's always going to be a problem, isn't it? Andy?
I mean, again, I mean, I have no reason to question or doubt any of that. I think, but the issue of online pylons, I mean, there was an issue, wasn't there, under the previous administration about online wind turbines as opposed to offshore, and some of the arguments against those were about aesthetics, NIMBY stuff. Are we going to have our skyline blighted by wind turbines? And but the point about mental health and open space is well made, because that isn't NIMBYism. That is health related as opposed to aesthetic. But I made the point previously, not because I'm trying to make a political point myself, but it became a political issue, the issue of online infrastructure in the south of the county, where, shall we just say, certain political parties, plural, not just one, have their heartlands. And it was felt to be a material factor in what happened in the East Suffolk election. So I could understand if someone was worried about the political impact at the county elections. And that there might be a political motivation for going a certain way because of the effect that it might have. That is, I'm just throwing it into the mix, okay? Yeah. I'm not having an opinion. And that is why I asked what had been published in terms of environmental impact, cost, and logistical implications of the two alternatives. And if Suffolk County Council had set out what its objections were, and were they environmental, which has been confirmed, because I didn't know. It was a genuine question, not a challenge. The only other thing I'd say in terms of the argument, in terms of permissions that are given to this, given it is the national grid, will it be regarded as strategic development that will just be approved at central government level without regard to any of the local planning authorities, be that district or county? So in terms of any representations we made, is it essentially going to be approved by a government department at central government level as a strategic development? Is that the approval and consent plan?
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Wendy.
Yes, just to say that I didn't know he lived in Suffolk. Ralph Fiennes has made a film opposing pylons, and he's very much in favour of what Deborah brought up, which is, absolutely the right way forward, I think, which is offshore. Offshore, and it's done in other countries and it's done successfully. So why can't it be done here?
But do you know the answer to my question, Wendy, is whether this is going to be a strategic development that's going to be approved? The approval will come from central government?
Yes. Sorry, it will definitely come from central government. It'll be like the solar farm on the Suffolk-Cambridge border where Ed Miliband just went along and said, yeah, we're doing this. Massive opposition locally, approved. HS2 approved. So yes, it will be a government decision. But still, we have to make our voice.
Openness, transparency, and accountability in action. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as a committee, then, I accept, there's more learned members on the committee regarding this problem. Should we then support Suffolk County Council's opposition to the proposal? Wendy.
Yes, I think we should, and I think we should also suggest that Suffolk County, that National Grid is made to look very seriously at offshore, and that they consider this, and that they take into account the destruction of the Suffolk County, the countryside, tourism, which is important. That's the problem with the phrase NIMBY, is that the NIMBY is used to dismiss someone's idea, but actually aesthetics are important to mental health. I don't want to go and sit on Gunton Cliff and look at a pile of pylons when I can look at the sea. And that's, does that make me a NIMBY because I don't want one?
No, and specifically in the context that I mentioned it, Wendy, I differentiated tangible mental health benefits from just, I don't like the look of it. Okay? I make that concrete, sorry, poor analogy, distinction. Absolute distinction. A mental health effect, for good or for ill, is a tangible impact.
Okay.
Just, I don't like it, is not really something you can reason with. But equally, in relation to Paul's question as chair, I would suggest, if this is going to be decided as central government, we should invite our MP as essentially the local representative of central government to come and explain this proposal and answer questions and be prepared to feed back any consensus from this committee to the government as our representative of that government, and I'll make that as a formal proposal.
Okay, thank you. Anyone like to second that proposal? Debbie, thank you. Wendy, is this something else?
I'm just wondering, are we supporting Suffolk? Have we also built in there supporting Suffolk?
Both. Is it both, Andy?
Stance?
Or
are we just inviting the MP?
The intention was to come to our opinion once she's spoken with us, rather than pre-agree a position.
I can't. No.
You think that's a delay?
It's too slow.
Oh well, okay. I'm talking about making an informed decision rather than just say, coming to a decision now when some people feel that certain questions haven't been answered.
I feel that, Andy. So I think you're right. So we need more information. But
give the MP as the representative of government a chance to make the case, and then agree our consensus afterwards. There's no intention to kick it into the long grass and do a decision. That isn't what I'm trying to do at all. I'm trying to be fair. Whatever I may privately.
Neil?
Can I suggest that if we do go down that route, it would be worthwhile having, I can't remember the lady's name, but having someone else along who has the knowledge to actually speak as well, and possibly inviting representatives from other parish councils that fall in our area, so that it's actually the pressure is put on from the whole area that Jess is actually the MP for.
But subject to availability. What I
Yeah.
don't want is another
No.
Sizewell situation where we can't get someone from the yes and someone from the no in the same room at the same time, so it never happens. Because then I would agree with Wendy, that would just be unacceptable delay.
Thank you. Wendy?
Yes. Right. We see, my intention was that this committee would recommend to full council that we send a message of support to Suffolk County Council for their position on these pylons.
Yeah.
I mean, you might say you can't make your mind up, but maybe other people can. But my proposal was very straightforward, that full council, we want full council's backing, you know, to support us in opposing the National Grid's position on the pylons through the Waveney Valley, and we're supporting them. That's all we're doing. We can also, of course, request more information. I'm surprised people don't feel better informed, but I don't think we need. That's my proposal.
Yeah, I accept.
Well, that's fine. But
Yeah.
the reason I made the proposal I did, Wendy, was because not everybody is as informed as you are, and it seems cart before horse to recommend opposing something before you've got the questions on which some people might form an opinion on it.
Yeah.
That was the only reason. I'm trying to be fair rather than prejudging an issue. And it didn't specifically say in the agenda to consider making a recommendation to full council. You know, otherwise, you know, I might have had a bit more of what lay behind the item. It just says to discuss and to decide whether to support, but it doesn't say whether to, as a committee, or whether it doesn't actually say, you know, to consider asking full council to actually decide something. Which is why I made the proposal I did. So actually, you know, we have a proposal on the table, and I think that needs to be considered first. And then if that fails to carry, then that one could be made. But we can't have one proposal being made that directly contradicts another one.
You can't do that. Neil. Let's just have Neil first.
Chair, on that one, actually, if it's only a proposal that hasn't been seconded, then you can have ones in direct opposition. Has it?
Yes.
I didn't hear it seconded.
Was it Debbie? Debbie seconded.
Debbie seconded. Sorry, yeah. But what I was more concerned about with this is that, do we actually know exactly what Suffolk County Council's opposition is? Has it stated its preference as to how it should be done? If it has, then yes, I'd say support it. But if it's just on kind of a vague idea that they don't want pylons.
We need more information. Wendy.
I think I actually forwarded Richard Rout's speech to everybody. So if you haven't read it, I'm sorry, but the position is the destruction of the Waveney Valley. You know, that's their opposition. And I actually, because I was thinking, how do we approach this? And I looked at different councils. I thought, okay, Suffolk County Council seem to have taken a position on this. Let's see what they're saying. And I forward it to people. Now, I'm sorry if people haven't read it, but maybe we can look at it now and see if people are minded to agree.
So all I'm saying is we have a little thing called standing orders, all right, which basically says that when a proposal is made, another directly contradictory proposal cannot be put forward until that one is either carried or failed. That's just a procedural issue. If I had known that this intended to done, I might not have made that proposal at the time I did. I made that proposal before you clarified what you were seeking this committee to do. Okay, so I didn't do it to sort of forestall anything that you might be proposing.
It was well intentioned.
Yeah. But equally, all I have asked for, in an attempt to be fair, is to ask our MP to make the government's case, which apparently she has come out and supported, so that we can then make a position after that, which might well be to oppose what is happening.
Absolutely.
So it might well lead to the same thing.
Yeah.
But it is an attempt to make
shall
sure that
shall
whatever recommendation we made, where questions have been asked, that we attempt in good faith to answer those questions before we come out for or against something.
So Andy's made a proposal. Debbie has seconded it. Can we vote on that, please?
No, I've got a suggestion.
Oh, go
Can
on.
you put a time limit on this? Because
Yes, I would be happy to,
actually
because
say
I've just said if other people can't be available, or if the MP says I haven't got availability for 3 months, agreed. So and also I would say that the meeting doesn't necessarily need to be a scheduled climate meeting, because it can be a standalone meeting, because that maximises the chance of securing availability from people, which, you know, second Monday of the month at 3:30,
constrained,
you know, might not do. So, yes, suggest a timeline, Wendy, but I am happy to put a timeline. If we, okay, that's fine. Well, shall we say February climate emergency? Because then if we haven't had a reply by then, February climate emergency can make a recommendation to February full council on taking a position for or against.
Yeah.
Sorry. The person from the Essex and Suffolk Pylons campaign is Rosie Pearson, past Pearson,
Okay.
who's also involved with the, I think she must be some kind of councillor, because she's also involved in the housing stuff and planning.
Right, so I'll clarify the proposal then, that we ask for that we ask for a standalone meeting to be set up at some point between now and February climate emergency, so that the questions can be put to the MP, and the responses to that can then be considered at February climate emergency, with this question, with Wendy's question, to then make a recommendation to February full council as to whether to come out and support a Suffolk County Council's position.
Thank you. Are you happy to second that, Debbie? Yeah.
If we're asking Jess Sato to attend the meeting or speak to us, that follows on to agenda number.
Yeah, no, I've already seen that. Yeah,
9.1, we're asking her to come and speak about the coastal defences.
Yes,
so we could always combine the two.
So you might well want to, if it's going to be a standalone meeting, you might well want to, she might want to come and speak in two different agenda items in the same meeting.
Yeah,
absolutely. Good suggestion.
To invite Rosie Pearson as well, who would be speaking against Jess Sato.
Yes, subject to availability, but it's we are simply seeking answers to questions from a spokesperson for both sides. Yeah, we don't want it to be confrontational.
No, not
they
at all.
can speak to their position. We can ask questions, and then we can consider the responses and see whether we can reach consensus on a position of our own.
Information gathering.
Yeah, but equally, as Wendy said, the whole point of the time thing is we don't want to repeat of the Sizewell thing where we can't get them in a room at the same time.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we need to vote on this one then, please, everybody.
We're voting to invite both, aren't we?
Yes, that's the proposal.
Yes.
Ideally.
Between now and February climate. So there's your timescale.
That's unanimous. That's everybody. Thank you. Are you all right with that, Taylor? You've got all that down.
I think my understanding is Ofsted, it's not National Grid, going underground.
Okay.
In the way, and Ofsted obviously aren't part of National Grid.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Okay. 119, to consider avenues of community engagement and relevant actions. As you just said, Debbie, 119.1, to discuss inviting Jess to speak with the Climate and Ecology Committee regarding Lowestoft's coastal defences. We've just married that one up with the other one, have we? So are we happy to buy?
Yeah, so I would suggest that we arrange one meeting with two agenda items.
Yeah.
So to speak to the two specific issues, rather than ask her to come twice within a relatively narrow time frame.
She would appreciate that, I think. Are you going to say something about that, John?
Well, just to say, I think this is an appropriate time to say that 2024 was the first year surface temperatures reached the 1.5 Paris climate record. And the CO2 levels continue to rise remorselessly upwards in gathering pace. And I just think this, as these figures have just come out a few days ago, that this committee just wants to note that effect. And it's particularly relevant, I think, with the coastal defences issue as well.
Yeah, very much.
The ice is going to melt and the sea levels will rise. So there's it's a huge.
And we're on the coast. And of course, it all coincides with the election of Trump, doesn't it? Who's going to do a lot for that? Off you go, Debbie.
This agenda item, it was asked, another councillor who's not on this committee asked me to put it on here because he wanted Jess Sato to speak to full council about Lowestoft's climate effective,
Okay.
and he was advised by officers that it should go through the climate committee.
I think we raised it here anyway last month, didn't we?
No, it was raised at full climate.
Taylor?
It was originally
Full
raised
council, I
at full
believe.
council,
Full
and even
council.
then at full council, they said it could be discussed by climate.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Okay,
that was
thank
the
you.
intention.
Andy?
So all I would suggest to try and do that is, as we've done with certain other standalone, if we are having a standalone meeting to discuss the two issues, you know, two separate agenda items, but both there because, you know, we want Jess to speak to both, and I think it would be fairer to her if we just say, you know, there's only one attendance required, you know, in a busy diary. If it's going to be a standalone meeting, we can say, you know, it's been arranged by climate, but no decisions will be made in that meeting. So other councillors are invited if they wish to attend.
You said that, Andy.
Yeah. And I think that then means that if other councillors who aren't on this committee want to attend, it's open to full council, even though it's not a quote unquote full council meeting.
Yep. Thank you. You all right with that, Wendy? Yeah. Yeah. Debbie? Okay. 119.2, receive an update on the litter pick for the 8th of February. Taylor?
I just need to go get Chris.
Oh, I see.
Oh, Chris is, oh.
He's the litter pick man.
Oh, it's an event, it really is. I'm going to the toilet.
Oh, toilet break. We're alive.
No, I don't want to miss the litter event. We've got our litter event.
You've just told all those stuff you're going to the toilet.
Yes, I agree with that.
Didn't have a mic on there.
She's quite close to mine. Christopher.
Thank you, Chair.
Litter pick on the 8th of February.
Thank you very much, committee members. Obviously, you decided on the 8th of February that you wish to carry out a litter pick. Obviously, it's not obvious because obviously you're not all on the Events and Comms committee either. The market is on that day as well. So obviously staff resources are limited to attend, to be there for health and safety purposes as per our insurance requirements. I do not know the reasoning. Obviously, I don't know the background on your reasoning or behind that particular date. I don't know if you wanted to use it for half-term engagement because the half-term week as well. If there was a purpose behind
if memory serves, I think we just felt that it would be too tight to do it in January, so as early as possible after January. I think that was the primary thinking. There was no significance to that weekend.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for clarifying that. As you said, happy if you would like to revisit that decision on the particular date, making you aware that it's also International Women's Day leading up to that week, first week of March. And obviously there will be a week's worth of events going on with other stakeholders leading up to the 8th of March, International Women's Day. So happy to try and support something alongside the communications officer to get the paperwork out in a timely manner to the residents on that street you have chosen. So
when you say the market, is that the Valentine's Day market?
Correct.
Wendy?
Yes, I mean, as Andy said, we were going to do it in January, and then we decided, well, we don't just want to leave it and never do it. So, as we said, I didn't realise that the date, because obviously 8th is a lot sooner than the.
Yeah, because otherwise it'll be the 15th, and everyone will be doing reduced half price Valentine's presents. That doesn't show you love that much, does it?
Well, I shall ignore that, Christopher. I shall ignore it, and I shall rise above that. Now, are we actually seriously saying we can't do Valentine's weekend? Are we actually saying we can't do the 15th because the 15th isn't the 14th?
No, we're saying the market is before Valentine's. It's the weekend before Valentine's Day, yeah, which is why it's on the 8th. We hadn't picked up on the significance of the date in relation to. So the following week, the 15th, if the Valentine's market is on the 8th, the following week on the 15th, would there be staffing availability for that?
Yeah, they're happy to carry that out, Councillor Pearce, if that is the decision you wish as committee members.
What about the other councillors who were going to go on this pick? Are they all free for that weekend?
Yeah, and despite Chris's illusion that I might not have anything to do, and a sad person who want to go around.
I was not implying that at all, Councillor Brooks. I was implying it as a consumer of Valentine's gifts, as it affects all of us.
Well, can I propose then, in light of the information provided and to avoid a clash with the Valentine's market and to ensure staff availability, as participate councillors have indicated they're available, that we rearrange it for the 15th.
15.
15th in the morning. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll make that as a proposal.
Yeah. Well, I'll second that. Should we vote on that, everybody? That's unanimous. That's
No,
that date.
thank you for choosing that date. As I said, I'll speak with the communications officer accordingly. In regards to data collection, obviously a litter pick is supposed to be more encompassing. I don't know how you want to record data, etc., of the litter being collected, what type of litter, etc. I don't know how far reaching you want this litter pick to be.
They're about that long, because I think. Wendy.
Right, the intention of the litter pick
Thank you,
is
Richard.
because the alleyways are very, very neglected. So the idea of the litter pick was to give people in one of the worst alleyways a sense of what it might be like if their alleyway was clean. So a lot of what we'll be picking up will be, I think we're hoping to do some weeding because the weeds are never taken out. The type of rubbish we're picking up would be plastic and paper. How far reaching do we want it to be? I have no idea. It's
Jerry? Thank you, Wendy.
As part of the Plastic Free Communities Initiative, I think we need to do at least two litter picks a year.
Oh, that's right.
So it's going to become quite a regular thing. So I don't know whether it's worth collecting data. I don't know. I mean, we hadn't considered it, but is it worth
How
it?
do you do it? Like as Suffolk Beach Cleans, they have to record data from the beach cleans. They collect data.
They collect all the bags up and they go somewhere to be processed.
Yes, that's correct. So they take that away from site and then split it up and then collate it, because that has to feed into they feed it into a national database of plastic litter in the beach. But as you said, so I don't know, as a committee, what you wish, as you said, you rightly pointed out that you wish the streets to be targeting the before and after sort of imagery, before and after of the alleyways. However, I don't know what's in the plastic free communities.
Janet, can I bring Janet in? Because she's been out of the room most of the day.
I was going to say, would we be taking items that are perhaps slightly bigger than what would be classed as litter, but small items of things that were easy to pick up without hurting yourself, but a bit too big to be classed as actual litter?
As you said, guided by the committee and what the remit of the litter pick means, etc. And obviously what I'll have to speak to our partners at East Suffolk Council and what they can collect, because obviously they have kindly, partners at East Suffolk Services agreed to collect any waste and see what the parameters of their waste carriage licenses, etc. on that day.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah. Well, this is very much a pilot litter pick, isn't it? So I would suggest that we make some effort to gather data. I mean, the primary purpose is twofold. Which is to meet the requirements of the plastic-free communities and to have a practical benefit in terms of the impact on a local community, which ties in with community engagement. So it's both community and environmental. Yeah. So we're not doing it to achieve a certain recycling target, for example. And it would be difficult to do so without knowing what you're going to find on a day. But if we make an effort to collate it and understand what the challenges might be around the data collation, because we don't know what we're going to find in advance. So we're very much having to react on the spot in terms of how we log the data. But if we make an effort to collate some meaningful data, and then review as part of reviewing that litter pick, which will tell us, we collected X bags of this, Y bags of that, whatever, we can understand whether there are any practical obstacles to collating meaningful data and what approach we need to take to that, or whether actually the way we go about it, if someone's willing to be on the spot bean counter, following the bags around and logging it all, is actually achieving what we want to do. But I think as a pilot exercise, if we make the attempt, but we may find that there are obstacles on the day that we come across that we then need to think about as we need to do this or that differently ahead of the next one.
Yeah, thank you. I've got two more people. Neil?
I was going to suggest that if Michael's willing to, if could speak to East Suffolk Services, because I would assume that since they get heavily involved in all the different days that go for it, yeah, is actually they will have probably some. Wendy,
Hang
I
on, Wendy.
understand that, but what I'm
Information, we've made all those contacts.
Wendy, if you let me finish, please. What I'm suggesting is that they will have a data form that they use, and that may well be a very good use for us to use as a template for what we're recording.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Thanks for that. Kathy,
Yeah, I agree that I think
Janet's
it'd
coming
be
back.
good to take a record of and monitor how much we collect, but I don't think you necessarily need to make it very complicated. I think we've picked up 5 bin bags this time, 6 next time. I think hopefully more than that. But I think it can be as straightforward as that. And when I've been involved in previous litter picks, that's all we've done.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Janet.
Yeah, thanks again. We decided which road it's going to be, hadn't we?
Yes, that is correct from the last meeting, I believe.
Yes,
Sorry.
the alleyway between Queen's Road and Cambridge Road was what's decided at
No,
the previous meeting.
Sorry, my mistake. It's the alleyway between Cambridge Road and Oxford Road. Because the Queen's Road is Queen's Road and, oh God, what's the other one? Is it, it's not Edinburgh Road, is it? It goes Edinburgh, Queen's, is that right, Janet? Edinburgh,
I know
Queen's,
they all are, but I get the order of
Cambridge,
them mixed up.
Oxford. Cambridge is the one that's more or less opposite where the new build is going on, the Gilbert's.
Could I just suggest just provide it to the office?
Yeah.
If you need to go
Yeah.
away and check it, just
Yeah.
provide it to the office.
We want to get it right.
And just in a timely manner, because then the communications officer can obviously put out the leaflet as per your request decision making last meeting.
So you want it as soon as possible.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Janet.
Yeah, thanks. Because I missed the last meeting, so I wasn't sure
Yeah, so
exactly
did
what
I.
was decided. I don't know if anyone had already suggested to include the little bit of St Margaret's Road that runs perpendicular, because they sort of share the same alley, but from a 90-degree angle to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
What you say you are including those in it?
well, we were, but yes.
Because I think that would make sense.
Hmm.
If that's not too late to
Taylor.
change it.
We're going to need a very clear outline.
Yes.
Because you don't,
There's a lot of add-ons here.
houses that
Yeah.
are like in that one section.
Okay. We'll have to make sure we know what we're doing. Andy.
Yeah.
So can I just suggest that Wendy or Janet, who's ever agreeing the location, they give the specific
Yeah.
roads to
The office.
the office, because they need to ensure staff and they need to know where they're asking East Suffolk to arrange the collection from, and so on like that. If they can do that sort of this week as soon as possible, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But also just a passing comment, not directly related to this, but certainly related to one of the intended outcomes. Chris just mentioned he's not familiar with the content of the plastic-free community. Debbie, could you send that to Chris as an overlap between climate and events? Is that okay with the paragraph? Because obviously our staff do litter picks on our own land, certainly. And if there's any I mean, we get it on the councillor update. Staff have done this area, and this many bags were collected. If there's anything from them from that internal process that needs to feed into that plastic-free communities thing, then there can be the liaison between climate clerk and events manager.
Thank you, Andy. Yep. Are you
The
all right
only
with
other thing was, so I contacted East Suffolk just to confirm what equipment they'd be able to provide, which they confirmed with me, but they asked how many sets of equipment do we need?
that? How many people volunteered last time?
Oh, God.
Is it just members from this committee? No, sorry, Debbie.
We're trying to get members of the community involved, and we were going to send
Leaflet.
round a leaflet to let people know what's going on. So we don't really know. What do we?
Oh,
Equipment that they can provide, pickers, hoops and bags.
yeah.
So we'll need at least a broad.
But you need a number. Yeah.
Say we need 12. 12 litter pickers, please, and
Hoops and bags
hoops, and yeah.
and several bags.
You discussed weeding also in the previous
16.
conversation. Obviously, any of that equipment doesn't cover weeding. Okay, so obviously gloves, etc.
Yeah. And maybe if they've got some kind of, I don't know what you call them, I've got one. There's a special kind of tool that you use to get weeds up with, but I can't remember what it's called.
Trowel?
It's like a trowel.
But it has a longer handle on it.
Yeah, what's it called?
I don't know. Weeding tool. I don't know. I
Weeding
can just say
thing.
it's the de-weeding tool.
De-weeding tool. That sounds good.
So
If I just say, when we did the beach clean recently, that it was suggested that we bring our own gloves, so you could tell the volunteers to bring their own gloves. So that's something we don't have to think about.
Yeah.
Protective gloves. Andy.
So I said I'd be happy to join in on the 8th. I can do the 15th similarly. Pair of sturdy gloves I can stretch to, but other PPE I would need because I won't have it.
Yeah.
But I've certainly got thick gloves that I have used in the garden on the rare occasion I go in it.
You only need to bring gloves. You don't. The other equipment will be provided.
But PPE in terms of pickers, any high vis or whatever I need to wear, then I need that to be arranged.
Thank you, Debbie.
The leaflet will need to mention that people will have to bring their own gloves. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And we said 12. 12 of everything.
15.
I think so.
Yeah.
15 of everything. It's odd. 15. Okay, thank you, Christopher, for all your hard work on that.
Thank you to the committee clerk as well and to the communications officer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye-bye. Right, let's move on. We're running out. We've got about another 17 minutes to get 3 items through. 119.3, discuss Lowestoft Town Council convening a public meeting to ascertain public views on the reduction in traffic speeds in set areas of Lowestoft. Debbie, you just got your hand up first there.
Yeah, this was asked to be put on by the people who are involved with the 2020's Plenty. 20's Plenty.
Is that
What's
people from the Most Easterly Community Group?
From the Most Easterly Community, yeah. And the 20's Plenty organisation are trying to get workshops around the country to give people the opportunity to air their views on traffic calming or traffic slowing traffic. Yeah, it's not traffic calming, it's slowing traffic speeds. They've had 2 already. They've had one in York and one in Tor Bay. The one in York worked quite well. The residents and stakeholders were invited, but it was mainly stakeholders that went to the meeting, and it was quite positive. The one in Tor Bay they described it as tough for the person who organised it, because people were suspicious of the motives of the organisers and how the results would be used. And they've decided that it's a bit risky for individuals to try to engage people. And there's been a suggestion that if parish councils are involved, that people that don't have any sway over highways or anything, that people would be more accommodating.
Yeah, receptive.
So that's the reason for asking the council to be involved.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
Yeah, I'm broadly supportive, but I think because it says in set areas of Lowestoft, I think the areas that would be identified need to come out of the public meeting. I don't think we should go in there with a view on where they should be, because that would fuel suspicions of an agenda. We have discussed this before, but primarily in relation to school crossings and as a safety issue. Never really, even though the benefits are noted, not primarily as a climate issue, primarily as a safety issue. And the feeling, Wendy will be aware of of the situation at Gunton Primary, because it's been going on and off for a number of years. And the latest advice is that it is not the length of the whole road, even though Gainsborough Drive is a very long road with like a double S bend about halfway down, The thing is that it needs to be a stretch of that road rather than the length of the road, because that identifies the safety thing. And so if there is any perception from people that actually we need a whole blanket zone across the town that should be 2020, there might be resistance to that. I'm not saying there will be, but there might be. So I agree that if we want this to be public led, that we should have a public meeting, and that should inform the locations. We shouldn't go into it by saying, well, we want your opinions on 2020 here, 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 and here, because then someone might say, well, what about there? And you know, but there are certainly, I mean, I was copied in on the emails that Debbie's referred to, and I haven't replied for the simple reason I knew this was due to be discussed, and therefore I didn't want to establish any kind of position before it was discussed. But you know, there is 141 outside the primary in Gunton. It has also been mentioned, well, it was mentioned back around COVID time when you know, social distancing meant in was coming one entrance, out the other entrance, but it has been mentioned again more recently because of very similar issues. You've got a very tightly constrained area there where there are both issues of parking congestion and speeding that are different problems with different solutions. A 20-mile-an-hour speed limit isn't going to deal with parking congestion. It deals with the speeding and the associated safety issues. But other schools potentially have similar problems, and with some schools, the Highways Authority is going to be county, and in some schools, it's going to be at least one school, it's going to be national, because there's a dual carriageway on the frontage. So I would say first of all that yes, we should have a public meeting, and that should have a very broad agenda to gather both views and locations where there are problems, rather than going in there telling people which areas we're going to discuss and which we aren't.
We've identified, John, and then I'll come to you, Wendy.
Yes, I think it's the proposal to have a meeting is a good one. I think from a climate point of view, where it's important is that with speeding traffic, it doesn't make it comfortable for walking and it doesn't make it comfortable for cycling. And we want to promote active travel, and people have told me that they don't feel safe on the pavements with cars speeding and lorries speeding at those sorts of speeds. So we can come at this from a climate point of view as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I agree with that. Wendy, yes, I was saving you to
Well,
last.
I'm actually going to speak against this item. I'm not against the 20, I'm against the public meeting. And I'm against the public meeting very much similar to the reasons that we didn't have a public meeting for the transport survey, that it raises expectations. And also I worry that a public meeting will simply attract the same people who will come and talk. I think better than a public meeting might be a drop-in session, that either we do it, we ask the library if we can use their facilities, or we do it as part of the market. When we have a market, we actually we flag it up and get some people who know what they're talking about, like the 20 campaign people, to actually commit some time to be around to ask questions like, how does it work? Because we all know how long it takes to get any kind of action on the highways, anything. I don't think, is the Gainsborough Drive go slow sign up yet? Probably not. That's been a year that's been agreed, and it still hasn't gone up. It's simple signs saying, go slow, children. I was told by the county councillor a good 9 months ago, it's all approved, they've got the money, it's going up by house. It's not up, is it? Unless I've missed it and it's fallen down.
And it's the same with the 2020. I mean, the newer proposal, as opposed to the one a few years ago to have it the length of Gainsborough Drive, the new proposal has been agreed by all relevant stakeholders, including county councillors, and it's with Highways to set a date, and it's been there for months. So we will see what happens. But yes. Sorry, Wendy, you were making a point. So you were speaking against. So finish speaking against. But you asked me a question about what was happening at Gunton, and I've just clarified.
I'm just saying, I just think I don't know how we because the issue will be with highways. That will be the stumbling block.
I know.
So I'm very I mean, if we're going to have a public meeting, what are we hoping to achieve in that public meeting? That's like,
Well, the idea is to ascertain public views, but
well, what is the point? You know, like to argue about every driver should go at 20 miles an hour. Well, that's not going to happen, is it? So, but there are places where we want people to drive safely and quietly, you know, pedestrian areas. Of course we do. The problem is getting highways to actually, you know, I know with the Gainsborough, you know, Gunton Primary School, the amount of people who've been involved in and the number of years just simply to get a sign there has gone on and on and on and on, and there is no action, and that is.
And that's not just that
So it's
school.
not-
It's every primary school
Yes.
I've worked in has had
Yeah.
the same problem, Wendy,
Yeah.
for years and years
Yeah.
and years.
So actually going for 20 is plenty. Well, fine, but basically that is what people have been arguing for years and years and years, you know, care outside schools. So I think we have to think of a way, if there is any way, of actually giving Suffolk County Council a boot out the backside on this one, rather than having another public, you know, it's a bigger issue than just 20 is 20.
Debbie.
I think it was more of a citizens' assembly type session. That's what these things in the other parts of the country have been. So basically, they've got someone in to talk to them about 20's Plenty and to promote it. So the 20's Plenty group will come along and talk to people. They'd explain the benefits, and then people would talk about it and come up with conclusions as to what they want to do. So, you know, to these citizens' assembly type things could be invited people from Suffolk County Council, people from the highways. They could be invited along as well. So as a result of that, something may come out of it, and they may know, or people may suggest which areas of the town it will work, they'd like it to happen in, for example, outside schools and other places. For example, the road I live in is basically a boy racer track.
Well, yeah.
You know, and there's lots of children around there, and people go way over the speed limit there. So, you know, it's just getting people's views on it.
Yeah.
Basically.
And it would also be advantageous, I think, to know how the rules really work, because I know that I go past the primary school on Westwood Avenue every morning and they have a 20-mile-an-hour limit outside their school. So how come some schools have it and others can't get it? I don't understand that. So I need some.
Very arbitrary,
Yeah,
isn't it?
arbitrary. Yeah, Andy.
Yeah. So I mean, I do support the public meeting. I understand what Wendy's saying and agree with it to a certain point. But equally, if we say, well, it's never going to happen because we're going to hit hold up at implementation stage, we're hit a brick wall with Suffolk Highways, then we're playing into that dynamic that actually just give up because it'll be difficult. We know it will. All right. And we can manage expectations in the public meeting by saying that we are here to ascertain public views. Implementation is going to be challenging, but we want to know how you see the problems and where those problems are. Where are the hotspots? We will then consider it and try to work out a plan to take this forward. But you know, we can make it clear that we cannot give outcomes because we will not be the authority making a decision. But the point that Debbie made is well made, that if this is led by Parish Council, when you get individuals doing it, they might be targeted if they are seen as political or having an agenda. And so I think it is worth doing it, but we should not hold these in specific locations where there are known activist groups, known problems, because then that might be seen as having an agenda. So I think it would be a mistake, for example, to hold it in the High Street or to hold it on Gainsborough Drive, or to hold it outside a particular school. It should be it should be a central, somewhere in central Lowestoft, like where there is a community venue where those people can come, but it should not be in their neighbourhood because that kind of implies that we're trying to skew it one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree with that, Andy. Neil?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one thing we have to look at on it is that 20's Plenty is a starting point, possibly, because 20's Plenty, unless it's got the speed limit with the around red sign, it isn't actually enforceable by the police will not actually normally enforce it. because it's not actually a legally speed.
So it's an
legal speed
advisory
limit.
thing, advisory.
It works at trying to change people's attitudes, which is where you're trying to do, and that's a positive thing. And if you're using it, you can then actually people can look at it and say, well, this is what I like the idea of that. Can we do it here or whatever? So it needs to be something that can be looked at being a longer term thing.
Yeah. Wendy.
Yes, I agree with that, Neil. I'd also be very interested to see the number of road traffic accidents in Lowestoft. Like what is our starting point? Number, presumably they are counted.
Figures. We need
Well,
figures.
they must
Police.
be.
Police would have those.
Police will have those figures. I'd be very interested to see those figures.
It depends on what they are.
What the traffic accidents, road traffic
it depends on what the accident is determined to be, as to what the figures will then be and how they're actually recorded. Because I've known this from having someone done it somewhere else.
Well, not just deaths, is what I'm saying.
No, injuries.
Injuries, yeah.
Debbie. Oh, and then Kathy. Sorry, Kathy, I didn't see Anna.
Yeah, I think the library will be quite a good central point because they do have a meeting room upstairs, so that's possibly somewhere it could be held.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. Kathy?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of point out that there's also a health benefit potentially, and that shouldn't be perhaps ignored, if not just people sort of walking more and cycling more, but also around air pollution and lung health, etc., etc.
Exactly what John said. Yeah. Think so. Andy?
I think if we were going to do it, you can make it clear that, to consider the climate safety and health implications of, rather than we're coming at it from one angle or the other, because there will be people who will want to come at this from a safety angle who might not engage on a climate angle, and vice versa. And that is really the public view, because the ascertaining the public views will shape where the concerns are. Wendy's point is fine, sourcing the statistical data. But that isn't the purpose of this meeting. So that would need to be sourced separately, because this meeting is to ascertain public views rather than statistical data from monitoring bodies. And some of the anecdotal data from public views may be near misses rather than accidents, which near misses are not likely to have been reported. They might be, but not necessarily. And I think we should also ascertain views from the schools themselves, because they have no jurisdiction in those roads, but staff are going to get collared in the playgrounds and in the office from angry parents. Even though they have no jurisdiction, they'll have that same dilemma themselves, where they understand the risk but have no power to do anything about it. So I think we most certainly should seek a view from all the schools in the parish. But in terms of ascertaining the public views, then I think, yes, we should, and I will propose that we offer a public meeting on the basis that it is at a central community location and not in a known hotspot. So there is no perception or accusation of bias, that we're trying to load this. We are going into this with no fixed perception of where the issues are, and we are we are asking that to come from the public meeting.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, we'll have to, standing orders, 15 minutes. So are we happy to extend to 15 minutes? Does anyone need a 1 minute break or anything first?
Carry on, but I do.
I think we do. I think two or three of us do. We better finish that off first. So we need to vote on that first. Okay, so everyone vote on that. Did you want to vote, Wendy? She's gone. Anyway, it's unanimous. It's unanimous anyway. Can we just have 1 minute?
So that was the vote for standard orders. That wasn't a vote on my proposal.
Oh, well, that was your proposal, I thought.
Did anyone second that?
No, sorry.
So I seconded Neil's proposal on extended standing orders, but I also made a proposal.
Yes, I know.
We do convene a public meeting, provided it is in a central community location. So we're not putting it in a particular.
I was going to say we'd all want. Neil seconded. So can we vote on that one, please? That's everybody. And
just one comment on that before we finish.
So
will someone? No, but just on that point. So will someone contact, or can the staff contact the 20 20's Plenty people to ask them to be present at that meeting?
Well, availability and date, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, but we want them to essentially run the meeting, do we? And how will it?
No, I think
work?
we've just
run the
voted to
meeting.
do a public meeting. I don't think we should make it a 20's Plenty meeting
No.
Okay.
because it is to ascertain public views on reduction in traffic speeds, which might or
says-
might not support 20's Plenty. They might support a different approach.
Okay.
It was for
But do we
Lowestoft
want
Town
them to-
Council to
Okay, so do we want to
convene
bring
it.
in any experts to talk on it? That's what
I would suggest not if at an initial meeting, if the purpose is to ascertain public views. What we then do with those views once we've collated them, we then might do a follow-up with 20's Plenty. If people have said they want 20-mile-an-hour zones at specific locations, we might then want to do that as a second step.
Okay.
But I would suggest that we don't ask them to be present at the first meeting, because otherwise I think we've made a prejudgment about what a solution might be.
So did we vote on that proposal? We did, didn't we? Yeah, that's okay. So we've got both those. Debbie, you're going to have to take over again.
Sorry. Where are we? Okay, item 120. Item 120, to review the following policies and provide feedback to full council. 120.1 investment policy, section 2.5. I don't know who was first. Wendy.
I have a bit of an issue on some of the wording. I think it's too soft.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
The main
On
point
3 point, just a minute, 2.1, why are ethical priorities not mentioned?
we're only reviewing 2.5, Wendy.
Section 2.5.
Oh, well, 2.1 talks about priorities of priorities. I'm just thinking that priorities should include ethical.
Yeah, but the investment policy, all right, it's been reviewed by standing orders and policy, but we asked it to come here to specifically
Okay.
consider 2.5 about the
Okay,
climate.
but 2.5 I've got, it's weak.
I agree.
It shouldn't just say we might, and if we can, it should actually say we will and endeavour, and that we should actually put ecological and climate matters have to be the heart of our decision making. And it's weak, isn't it? It's very weak. It needs strengthening.
It's a statement that actually doesn't give you a way forward.
Yeah, it just says, well, we will if we can, but basically we probably won't.
Okay, so that's your.
It needs 2.5 needs strengthening. I'm sure Andy's got
Okay,
better wording
Andy.
than I have.
Well, I agree 100%. I read it. I mean, I think we had actually asked for the wording to be circulated. I don't know if it was, but I read the policy. So briefly, that paragraph 2.5 currently reads, this is of an investment policy, all right? So it's not primarily a climate policy, it's about a financial management policy. So it's being considered from a financial point of view, but there's this specific paragraph that deals with climate, okay? So it says the council has declared a climate emergency, health emergency, and has declared Lowestoft an earth protected town, and will consider these matters when making investment decisions insofar as this is reasonably practicable. The council recognises that there are limitations on the extent to which it can make environmental, social and governance comparisons and assessments, not least owing to 2.51, multiple and diverse sustainability frameworks and standards, including on sustainability disclosure, 2.5.2, the lack of common definition of sustainable activities, 2.5.3, greenwashing, a difficulty establishing the depth of claimed green credentials. To be fair, the core text of that paragraph was probably in there before we declared the health emergency in the earth protected town, and possibly even before the climate emergency, and that opening sentence was probably inserted in there. But equally, all it's saying is the council will consider this, but it will be difficult. Well, I mean, that's not really acceptable, because we need to consider how we get through the difficulties and how we will consider it. And so what I'd like to suggest is, because we've now got a schedule of dates that are through, that we consider this and build it into the climate action plan. And then once we've agreed specific measures for monitoring, assessment, and dealing with these things in the climate action plan, then we rewrite paragraph 2.5 to cross-reference to the climate action plan. And that would be my proposal.
Well, I second that. As long as we get it done before, as long as the climate action plan meets before May.
So we've had a bunch of dates because we said we would like multiple meetings at the start of this year. So there's a bunch of dates that Taylor sent out, I think only at the end of last week, was it? With dates in February and March?
Yeah. So that, yes, I'll second.
Okay, and a vote?
I can't vote because I wasn't here.
Okay.
So just to put you in picture, that the statement on considering the climate emergency, health emergency, and so on in relation to investment policy decisions is quite weak and woolly because it's just saying that we will do it, but it's difficult because of this. It doesn't actually then say how we get through it and do it. So what we're saying is build it into the climate action plan, build specific measures into the climate action plan, and then rewrite this paragraph to cross-reference to the specific section of the climate action plan that has how we will deal with this in it.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So we're going to meet and decide what we're going to put in there.
Yeah, there are a number of meetings.
There
are a number of meetings that have already been tabled to finalise the climate action plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie, for that. So it's 120.2 Town Infrastructure Investment Plan.
I haven't looked at this at all.
Community infrastructure needs and or aspirations. Anybody?
We have looked at the infrastructure investment plan this year.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, we did, Debbie.
The only point I would mention on that is the third paragraph where it says the town council has declared a climate emergency.
Yeah.
We've declared a climate and ecological emergency, so that needs to be incorporated there.
Couldn't we imagine? Wouldn't we have to involve all of them? The health as well.
Well, I suppose, but I'm just looking at it from a climate committee perspective.
Yeah. Andy?
So yeah, I didn't know this one was going to be on the agenda today, and until I saw the agenda. Was the other one I had a bit of notice because it had been rolled over from last month, and prior to that had actually been referred from standing orders and policies. So I agree, but I think so. For anyone who's unfamiliar with the town infrastructure investment plan as a policy, a lot of the infrastructure that it refers to is not under the direct decision-making jurisdiction of the town council, but it will relate to things like the grant funding. But it comes into specific play with SIL Section 106 and the Neighbourhood Development Plan, in as much as they relate to investment in infrastructure. So what I would suggest to, same principle, is that we take it under detailed and active consideration as part of the climate action plan, and then any specific measures that are identified and built into that, we come back to this policy and we put cross-references in this policy. We don't need to rewrite the text, but we can put a cross-reference in there to the climate action plan, to the specific clauses.
Yeah,
and I'll make that as a proposal.
Yeah, I'd second that. Anybody like to make a comment about that? Are you all happy? We'll have a vote on it then, please. That's unanimous. That's everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Takes us to 121, date and time of next meeting, which is Monday, the 17th of February. 122, any items for the next agenda?
Just to make sure we got it on there as a placeholder, the assumption being that we would have had the meeting with Jess Asato and the lady from the pylon thing before then, just to make sure we've got a placeholder on there to consider the outcome of that meeting.
Good point. Thank you, Wendy.
Bins. I've been reporting bins being left out in Harbour and Normanston, as I know Janet has as well, and other councillors, for years, and nothing happens. So I've reported another lot recently, well, 6 months ago, let's say, in a year, because they're left out on the pavement. Anyway, so one of the people who who's just moved in and is leaving her bins out in the alleyway, my alleyway. I said very nicely to her, you're not really supposed to leave your bins out. My landlord said I could. So I said, well, you shouldn't really. And I said, and I will report you if you don't take them in. I said, I do feel sorry for you. You've got a very small garden, but because what happens is people blah, blah, all the rubbish starts collecting. So I did report her, and I then mentioned it in the bin thing, and with various emails to the person in charge of the bins, you know, enforcement. It was forwarded to enforcement months and months ago. Anyway, I bumped into the person who I'd reported her bins, and I said to again, look, because there was rubbish beginning to accumulate around them. I said, look, please, you know. Anyway, so we had a conversation. She said, have you spoken to anybody else? I said, yes, I have. I've reported them all. You know, like, I said, have you heard from me, Suffolk County? She said, no, nothing. And she's very nice. Like, she had no reason, there was no reason for her to lie to me.
No.
Because I wasn't kind of attacking her, because I said, I do understand, and it is difficult. She's not on the pavement, she's in the alleyway. So I emailed East Suffolk Council to say, having been told that if I report bins, enforcement will pick it up, I did say my heart sunk when I heard those words. I have heard nothing in months from enforcement, nothing. The person who's done it has had nothing.
Okay.
It seems to me that there is no enforcement in Lowestoft. That's the impression I get, that when it comes to issues, where are the you
Okay.
fill in the form on the website, you send it in, you send a chasing email to
So
people, you get no response.
So you want something on the agenda around
I do.
bins to talk about enforcement?
Enforcement,
Yeah.
because we're trying to
We'll
do
do
our
that.
bit, and what,
that
it's
right,
all
Taylor?
fine words are very, very well, but action is what we want.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Andy?
Yeah, the only thing I agree, and it's both a climate and a community issue, and if it is felt that there is no enforcement and it's having a detrimental effect on both community and climate and potentially health as well, if it got away, would anyone be available? I mean, we can consider it at the meeting, absolutely, but then we might come out and say, well, let's ask these questions of East Suffolk. So maybe they can be notified that we intend to discuss this, and would they like to dial in on the meeting to speak to this issue?
Good idea.
What's
That's
the
a proposal?
excuse?
Oh, well, that's just an agenda item, isn't it?
Can that be done administratively?
Yeah, so it can just be the agenda item is to discuss enforcement and potentially receive presentation.
Yeah. Is that okay? Thank you, Andy. Wendy?
Well, I know we've
we've
been a
got
very,
about-
very long meeting. And
About 1 minute, that's all.
1 minute, that's it. I'm fed up with non-replies to emails by various people at East Suffolk Council. I'm fed up to the back teeth. And I know it's even worse for our residents.
So consider that as part of the item.
It's not Janet Craig, though, is it?
No, Janet.
Yeah. But you can make that point in the meeting as a Q&A, and if not, if they don't attend, it can be fed back as part of the committee feedback that actually this is damaging.
Yes.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you ever so much. Well, we better end the meeting there. So we've just run over our extra 15 minutes.